The moment Natalie Blake pulled into her parents' driveway, her phone buzzed with a calendar alert that made her stomach twist. Project Aegis Final Review. You are now the sole military sign-off authority. She stared at the screen. For a moment, she didn't move. Then slowly, she clicked confirm, turned off the ignition, and stepped out into the bitter air of Colorado Springs. 5 years since she'd walked through that front door. 5 years of silence, deployment, and disappointment on both sides. And now she was back, carrying more weight on her shoulders than just the Silver Eagle insignia tucked inside her garment bag. From the outside, the house hadn't changed. Same pale shutters, same uneven pathway, same wind chimes her mom never took down despite their constant noise. But the moment she stepped into the foyer, it hit her. Nothing inside had changed either. "Natalie, you made it," her mother called out from the kitchen without even looking up. "Dinner's almost ready. Ryan just texted. He's bringing that wine Michelle Reiner likes. She promoted him again last week. Can you believe that?" No hug, no eye contact, just news about her golden brother. Natalie took off her boots slowly, the same way she used to when sneaking in past curfew. "That's great for Ryan," she said flatly. "Oh, it's incredible. Head of Project Aegis integration. I mean, she trusts him with so much. You know Michelle rarely puts young people in charge." Natalie bit the inside of her cheek. She knew exactly how much Michelle trusted Ryan. More importantly, she knew how much Michelle didn't trust him, which was why Natalie had been placed as the Pentagon's liaison. She climbed the stairs and entered her old bedroom, a preserved museum of who she used to be. Cheerleading medals, Dean's List certificates, her Harvard Business School acceptance letter still framed, no mention of her ROTC scholarship, no trace of her promotion ceremonies, no photos in uniform, not even her Bronze Star certificate. They had frozen her in time. At the moment she had stopped being who they wanted. She sat on the edge of the bed, stared at the pale yellow walls, and ran her fingers along the frame of a photo taken the week before she enlisted, everyone else smiling. She had hesitated. She remembered that day well. Her father Frank had looked at her as if she had spat on the family name. "You're too smart for the military, Nat," he'd said. "It's for people who didn't have options. You did. You still do." "I chose this," she had said back then. "And I'm not sorry." He hadn't spoken to her for 2 months after that. Natalie stood up, opened her suitcase, and pulled out her uniform. Midnight blue, crisp, lined with ribbons and medals, each earned under pressure. She stared at the Silver Eagle on the collar and hung it in the back of the closet behind a dusty prom dress. Tomorrow, everything would change. Just one more family dinner to survive. Downstairs, her brother Ryan's voice echoed in. He had arrived, loud, confident, and already halfway through bragging. Natalie descended slowly, her military posture instinctively kicking in the moment her father glanced over. "Well, if it isn't the traveler," Frank said, half smirking. "Still doing that admin work for the Army?" Ryan laughed. "Hey, Nat, Mom said you're still stationed out in Virginia. You ever gonna stop living out of suitcases and join the real world?" Natalie smiled politely. "I go where I'm needed." Ryan just got approved to lead the user interface design for the Aegis rollout. Her mother chimed in as they took their seats. "It's such a big responsibility. The contract is worth over $1 billion, right, honey?" 1.2, Ryan said, grinning. "And guess who's flying in tomorrow for the site visit? Michelle Reiner and a Pentagon rep, supposedly a colonel. Hope they're not too uptight." Natalie raised her glass to her lips, hiding a smile. Hope not. Dinner was a cascade of humble brags and comparisons. Julia, their cousin from New York, tried to break the tension once or twice, but even she knew better than to interfere. Natalie said little, letting the conversation pass over her like static. "You know what I think, Nat," Frank said after the third glass of wine. "I think you just wanted to rebel. Could have been a CFO by now. Instead, you're still a captain?" "Actually," Natalie said, keeping her tone even, "I was promoted 6 months ago." "Oh, yeah?" Ryan scoffed. "To what, Major?" She didn't answer. "Well, you missed it," Ryan continued. "Michelle's been asking me to prep something special for tomorrow. I think she's eyeing me for a senior director role next quarter. Maybe even VP by next year if the Pentagon loves our pitch. Natalie stabbed a piece of asparagus and smiled. Let's hope they're impressed. Julia caught her eye across the table. Natalie saw it there, curiosity, respect, maybe even suspicion. But she said nothing. Back in her room, Natalie removed her uniform from the closet and laid it carefully across the bed. She checked the buttons, smoothed the seams, then opened her laptop and pulled up the final version of tomorrow's security review outline. She scrolled past the names until she found it. Project Aegis, Final Authority, COL Natalie Blake, Cyber Command. She closed the laptop. In less than 12 hours, she would walk into Aegis Defense's boardroom in full uniform. She would sit at the head of the table, not as a daughter, not as a sister, but as the ranking official overseeing everything they were so proud of. Her father wouldn't be shaking her hand. He'd be waiting for her approval. Her brother wouldn't be boasting. He'd be answering her questions. Let them have their dinner tonight. Tomorrow, they'd taste something different. The kind of silence that only comes from realizing you underestimated the wrong person. Have you ever been ignored after giving your all, especially by your own family? Type 1, if you know that feeling all too well. Natalie stepped out of the elevator and into the marble lobby of Aegis Defense Corps headquarters, her dress uniform immaculate, her silver eagle insignia gleaming in the early morning light. A hush rippled through the front desk. The receptionist nearly dropped her latte. Ma'am, Colonel, can I help you? I'm expected, Natalie said calmly, presenting her Pentagon clearance. Conference Room A, Project Aegis Review. The security guard stood upright, scanning her badge twice, visibly startled. You're that Colonel Blake? I suppose I am, she replied with a thin smile. She walked down the corridor, where portraits of male executives lined the walls. Their eyes seemed to follow her, some with reverence, some with suspicion. Natalie felt the same pressure she'd felt on deployment, watchful, loaded, political. But now the battlefield was carpeted and catered. As she approached the glass conference doors, she heard her brother's voice inside. So, I streamlined the user interface by eliminating redundant authentication layers. Michelle said it was brilliant, simple, elegant, secure. Natalie opened the door. The room went silent. Her brother Ryan, still mid-presentation, froze. He stood in front of the projector, tablet in hand, confidence leaking from his posture like air from a punctured tire. Natalie? He said, eyebrows raised. Why are you wearing that? Before she could answer, CEO Michelle Reiner rose from her seat at the head of the table. Colonel Blake, she said warmly, glad you could make it in person. Your presence will be invaluable today. Michelle turned to the stunned executives. For anyone not already briefed, this is Colonel Natalie Blake, Pentagon's lead liaison on Project Aegis. She holds final approval on all tech specs, security protocols, and budgetary alignment. A beat of stunned silence. Frank Blake, Natalie's father, stared at her like he was seeing a stranger. You're the liaison? Yes, Natalie said evenly. Have been for 6 months. The legal officer from across the table muttered, We thought she was dialing in remotely. No one told us she'd be family. She didn't get this post because of family, Michelle cut in sharply. She earned it. Ask the Joint Cyber Command if you have doubts. Natalie took her seat at the far end of the table, directly opposite her father and brother. Her placement wasn't accidental. Please, Ryan, she said, gesturing for him to continue. We're all eager to hear your full proposal. He tried to regain composure, but his voice cracked. As I was saying, we've removed two-step encryption layers in favor of simplified user protocols to... Natalie raised a hand. Hold. Did you coordinate that change with endpoint security? No, not directly, Ryan admitted. We assumed the streamlining wouldn't impact compliance. Natalie tapped her pen. Assumptions don't hold weight in federal contracts, especially ones involving quantum threat protocols. A few team leads glanced uncomfortably at each other. One of them, Dylan, looked down, hesitated, then slid a small flash drive across the table toward her. You might want to see the timestamp logs, he said under his breath. Natalie pocketed the drive silently. She'd review it later. Ryan's face darkened. What is this? An ambush? This is an audit, she replied. You're responsible for code that affects more than just company profit. It affects national security. Her father leaned forward, tension sharpening his tone. Couldn't you have warned us, Natalie? At least given us a heads up before showing up like this? That would have defeated the purpose, she said, voice calm but heavy. My job isn't to coddle egos. It's to ensure protocols are followed, no matter whose name is on the payroll. The rest of the review continued with executives addressing both Michelle and Natalie, acknowledging her technical authority with increasing respect. Every time she spoke, people took notes. Every time she clarified, eyes widened. Ryan shrank smaller and smaller in his chair. At the end of the session, Michelle stood. Colonel Blake will remain on site today and tomorrow to review security architecture and run compliance checks. Everyone, please provide her with full access. Heads nodded, chairs shifted, the room started to empty. Ryan remained seated, jaw clenched. I know what this is, he muttered. You're doing this to make me look small. No, Natalie said as she stood, slipping the flash drive into her tablet case. You did that all by yourself. She stepped out into the hallway. Behind her, she could hear whispers. From the elevator, Michelle joined her. For what it's worth, she said quietly, you were flawless. And Dylan's logs. You'll want to look at those. There's code being pushed under your brother's account that doesn't match the source tracking. Someone's covering something. Natalie nodded. Then I'll uncover it. Michelle glanced sideways. If this escalates and it gets ugly, are you ready? Natalie smiled, cool, measured, sharp. Ugly doesn't scare me. Being underestimated does. Have you ever had to prove yourself in a room full of doubters, especially when they thought they knew you? Type 2, if that's ever been your fight. Natalie stared at the screen in front of her. The email header read, Code injection identified, flagged under R. Williams credentials, severity, high. Attached was a detailed analysis from the compliance team. The flash drive Dylan had slipped her wasn't just useful, it was damning. Lines of unauthorized code, cloaked in pseudo-authentication headers, timestamped during midnight logins. A digital signature tied directly to her brother Ryan. And yet, Natalie knew the sloppiness wasn't his style. Someone was using his name. Or worse, he knew and looked away. She closed the laptop, straightened her jacket, and headed toward her father's office. When she entered, all three were already there. Her father Frank, her mother Eleanor, and Ryan, waiting like it was a tribunal, a silent one. Close the door, Frank said stiffly. I prefer it open, Natalie replied, standing tall, hands calmly clasped behind her back. But fine, Frank gestured toward the chair. Sit. I'll stand. Eleanor shifted uncomfortably on the edge of the sofa. Ryan stood by the window, arms crossed tightly. No one spoke for a long beat. Finally, Frank broke the silence. You've made quite the impression today. Not my goal, Natalie replied. Just doing my job. Ryan scoffed. That's what you call it? Showing up in uniform? Blindsiding everyone? I sent the briefing deck to your inbox 2 weeks ago, she said coolly. You never opened it, Eleanor interjected. We didn't know you had that kind of authority. I earned that kind of authority, Natalie corrected. Not through name, but through action. And for the record, this uniform isn't a costume. It's not for show. It's a resume. Frank narrowed his eyes. Are you here to punish us? I'm here because you dismissed every achievement I've made for a decade, she said, voice tight. You elevated Ryan at every turn, praised his titles, his desk, his corner office, and you buried mine. Do you know what my last deployment was? Who I saved? The systems I rebuilt? The missions I led? Frank looked away. No, Natalie said. Because you never asked. You decided it didn't count unless it came with a business card. Ryan stepped forward, his voice rising. So now what? You get to pull rank? Humiliate me in front of Michelle and the whole team? Michelle's the one who told me to investigate, Natalie replied, her tone sharpening. This isn't personal. It's compliance. And right now, your credentials are attached to code that could have compromised federal systems. That's not a family problem. That's a federal one. His jaw clenched. You think I'd risk something that stupid? Natalie looked him dead in the eye. I think someone did. And if it wasn't you directly, then you better start naming names. Because I'm running a full trace, and when it's over, someone will be held accountable. Frank stood abruptly. This is absurd. You can't seriously think your own brother. I don't have the luxury of family bias, she snapped. That's your mistake, not mine. The room crackled with silence. Eleanor wiped her eyes. You've always been different, Natalie, but we never knew how far you'd go. I didn't go far, she said softly. You just stayed still. She turned to Ryan. You had a chance to build something real, and you blew it chasing shortcuts. His voice dropped, bitter. I was under pressure. You don't get what that's like. She stepped closer. You think I don't? Every decision I make could cost lives. Every signature I place could destabilize nations. But I still read every spec. I show up. I earn every stripe on this collar. Ryan looked away, ashamed. Frank cleared his throat. What happens now? Natalie's voice was calm, but ice-edged. Now I review the logs. I file my report. And if it confirms what I suspect, I initiate formal escalation. You know what that means, Dad. He looked stricken. It means I might have to recommend termination, whether it's your son or your team. She let the words hang. But I'd rather not, she added. I'd rather fix the system. You still have time to cooperate. Frank nodded slowly, the realization settling in. You're not the little girl at the dinner table anymore. No, Natalie said, and I'm not here to ask for respect. I'm here to command it. Just then, her phone buzzed. Michelle Reiner, she answered. Colonel Blake. Michelle's voice came through the speaker, tense. We have a press inquiry coming in about the security breach, and the department wants to fast-track your internal audit. I need your summary on my desk by morning. Understood, Natalie said. I'll send it. She hung up and looked at the three people who had once doubted her at every step. You asked me yesterday what I wanted, she said, opening the door. I wanted to be seen. She paused, just before walking out. Now you see me, and if you're smart, you'll start seeing the consequences too. If you've ever had to fight for respect in a room that once wrote you off, type 3, let's hear your story below.